And Maryland. Okay, we're doing really great. We have the majority of it. So we're always looking for great ideas. If you have an idea for art that you're aware of that is important and makes a difference, speak to one of us. This is a program that we're actively seeking support. This is our kickoff exhibition for the semester. It's a really exciting one for us. A friend, Jason Patterson, also an artist in the community, shared the idea with some excitement that we might ask Candace Hunter to show here. And it was with a little trepidation that I called her and said, "We don't know who I am, we don't know our organization, but I heard about you, and I wonder if you would consider the possibility of showing at the University YMCA." And we had a really nice conversation, and it was very gracious of her and very generous and for her to say, "Yes, I will show her." She's a big star. She's from Chicago. She just had a really big show that just opened at the Intercontinental Hotel in Milwaukee. It's called So Be It, See To It. I like the work of Octavia Butler, which is just one of many, many, many things that she has done that is pretty amazing and almost overwhelming to look at the kind of stuff that she's done. So, I have a brief description. Candace, full disclosure, is excerpted from something called Chicago Defender, but as I said, the short version of what you said for tonight, so I'll just read it to you. Candace Hunter, a native of Chicago, studied the plastic arts and performance arts at Barat and Moline colleges in the Chicago area. College makeup introduced her to methodology, genres, and taught her details and specifics about the materials she would later use and apply to her work, but her talent was natural. She's an artist, and a whole number of people have said that same thing to me and sort of spreading the word with Candace. Jason was the first to say it, and the one who's with it as well. So she's considered an artist. Her work is always authentic and rooted in the tradition from which she evolves. As an African American woman, the world reflects her experiences as well as those of her race. Her work is beautiful, evocative, and oftentimes controversial, such as her recent series, which part of which appears called Hoodie. This collection of pieces forces you to look at the murders of young black men represented by the hoodie associated with Trayvon Martin. Hooded means covered, therefore hidden. And so, as we look at the many senseless murders of unarmed black men by policemen where the truth has been removed. The Hidden Truths collection is soul-stirring and evokes sadness, anger, empathy, and compassion. It inspires us to do something to change the way black men are seen and mistreated in the world. I'm inspired by this show, and I hope you are too. I'm very grateful to Candace for being here. Please welcome her.
I normally don't speak with the mic. If I spoke like this, could you hear me better than with the mic?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Who said no? Somebody say no? No. Okay. You're going to detention right away. Hello, and thank you for being here. Thank you for taking a walk around and looking at the work. I would like to thank Anne Erasmus for inviting me here. I would like to thank Jason Patterson for recommending me. It has already been a wonderful relationship being here. Hooded Truths first opened at the historic Southside Community Arts Center in Chicago in 2014. What compelled me to do the work was the death of a young black boy, Trayvon Martin. His death got the attention of the nation. Not since 1955 had the death of a black boy caught the attention of the world. Emmett Till, a boy from Chicago, my hometown, was murdered. Viciously, horribly, sadistically murdered. We never got to know what his life could have been. We know what kind of boy he had been, but we never knew what kind of man he would grow up to be. We never knew what children he might have. We never knew if he would solve world problems or teach school. We would never get to know that because he died. He was murdered the year I was born. He was murdered a few months before I was born. For a while, he went to McCosh Elementary School, which was literally 3 blocks from where I lived. I went to McCosh for kindergarten. And my phone needs to be turned down. And my sister will do that now for me, thank you. So not since Emmett had the nation spent time with the idea of the death of a black boy. His death sparked the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement might have happened anyway, but it is true that his death ignited something in humanity across the nation, amongst all peoples. That there is something very, very wrong here when a boy can be taken from his home and murdered. Countless deaths since then. Countless. Just not ones in the newspaper. So then we have Trayvon. And he took our breath away. He took the breath of many people away. His death was so senseless and so wrong. By anybody listening to those first tapes, when that woman on the phone, that dispatch operator said, "Sir, stand back. Sir, go back. Sir, don't follow him." And we all heard those words, and yet the boy still lost his life. I needed to do something about that loss of life. I'm an artist. So what is it that I do? I create images that talk to the things that are going on in the world. I am an artist who could paint pretty pictures of flowers. I could do lovely landscapes, and I have done some lovely landscapes, but it's not who I am as the child of my parents, as the grandchild of my grandfather, as the girl in a long line of people who cared about America, the race, and how to be human beings on this planet. And so most of my work deals with some kind of injustice. So this particular body of work is all about the death of Trayvon. Trayvon is not in any of the images that I created, but the hood is. The hood became the lens in which we looked through to see injustice. And so all of the pieces in the show, there's a hood that surrounds that injustice and that truth, and helps, hopefully, for one to focus in, zero in on those things. I was listening to the lovely article that Anne read in The Defender, and it talks about modernity, and it talks about black men. And let me be clear that this show is not just about black boys. It's about women and girls and men and boys who've had injustices heaped on them from the first foot onto the slaver ship. From the first foot. I think everyone in this room is aware and painfully aware of the girls who were stolen from a school in Chibok, Nigeria, a couple of years ago. Girls going to school to learn, going for their tests so they could excel and move to the next grade level. Girls who wanted a better way, girls whose parents sacrificed for them to be at that school instead of in the fields or doing some work on the farm. Those girls were stolen, and their parents still don't know where they are, how they are, if they're living, what they're thinking. Are they crying tonight? Your parents don't know that. Bob and I discussed in the car that when you lose a child, there's nothing that prepares you for the loss of a child because it goes against the nature of humanity. We are supposed to die before our children. Our children are not supposed to be lost somewhere in the world. Our children are not supposed to be taken from us, what those girls were. But guess what? That was 263 girls. Nearly 14 million young men, women, and children were taken from the shores of Africa between 1500 and 1866. 13 million. Their parents didn't know where they were. They had no clue. There was no internet. There was no phone. There was no newspaper. They were just gone. That is the start of the injustices heaped upon people of melanin in the United States of America. The atrocities that happened to those people. We'll never, ever, as modern people, we'll never really be able to grasp what that was. We can say it, but we don't know. Heck, I didn't want to share a bed with my sister when I was a girl. No air, very few bits of food, no clean water. Women being taken advantage of on roads, available sexual beings. So the inhumanity towards the women started before they ever reached the Americas, because they were available sexual beings, creatures. So it started before the New World's entry. I'm sorry, I know it's hard, it's ugly. It's an ugly truth. It's a very ugly truth. So the first piece in the show is this piece that is a replica of my take on a very iconic figure that you can find in most history books, a slice of one of the slaver ships, and how the people were placed foot to head on top of one another times for that voyage to the New World. And of course, instead of men and women, I have the hood. Because the same kinds of attitudes that allowed for slavery to happen in the first place are some of the same things that are going on now. Some of the very same attitudes, and we're actually seeing it more and more through this election season, that some people have not let go of certain things. So the middle passage was the first piece. In the original show, I had this box for the boot or the hold for the ship. And because any ship leaving for its travels carries the provisions that you need for that trip. So there would have been coffee, there would have been rice, there would have been rum. There probably would have been cigars for the captain and the big guys on the ship. And I started thinking the day that I was creating the boot, and I started thinking about little kids in inner cities who do not have adequate breakfast before they leave home, and who stop at the little corner bodegas, and they get that little black plastic bag, and they get the orange food group, I call it. They get flaming hot Cheetos, they get an orange Ni soda, or they get that orange drink that has nothing to do with orange juice. And that's what they fuel their bodies with during that day at school. So if they can't pay attention, there's no wonder, because it's chemical, salt, and sugar. There's no wonder that a kid can't make it through the day when they don't have an adequate nutrition to fuel their bodies and their brains. And so I placed those bad foods in here as well for that modern child making their trip and how they make it through the day, the provisions that they need. I had a wonderful woodworker, Kendall Glover, who worked with me on the show. And he said, oh, I gotta throw in the cigarettes. So the Newports are from Kendall. I wouldn't put the cigarettes in here, but Kendall said, yeah, because that's what they're doing. Killing themselves. So being killed by outside sources or being killed by inside sources. And if any of you are cigarette smokers, I'm sorry, but you should stop immediately. Immediately. So the work covered from the first moment on the slave ship through to things that are happening today. So the pieces over on this wall, I'd like to pay attention to, these upturned faces with the hoods either completely covering them or in the face of the upturned heads. There are initials on them and what appears to be a fraction. And those pieces represent, I've originally done 5, I could not borrow back the 5th one, it was sold. Represent the states that I consider the most egregious in how they deal with citizens on death row. So the fraction is one number over another. The first number is the number of black men on death row. The second number is the total number of people on death row in those states. So I got California, Mississippi, Texas, and New Hampshire. I really thought that like Mississippi was going to be the worst before I started the research. And when I realized how many people California puts on death row every year, I went, wow, this is the Sunshine State. Wow, it's not on my list now, places to live. Not that I'd ever do anything bad enough to go there, but just, you know, it's that mindset of taking someone's life. The most egregious state in my heart is the first one there by Anne. It's New Hampshire. Their fraction reads as a whole number. It's 1 over 1. There's 1 man on death row. There's only ever been 1 man on death row in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has the death penalty on the books. New Hampshire does not have a death chamber. This man will be on death row until his body or his mind or his soul succumbs to death. He's not allowed humanity to visit him. So when you're on death row, you can have a chaplain or you can have legal counsel. I'm sure this man has exhausted any money for legal counsel by now. A chaplain, I don't know if a chaplain visits him or not. The guards pass through to him. He has an hour in the yard by himself a week. We all know that without the touch of another human being, we die. We see it happen with rats and mice. If they're not with other rats, if the mice aren't with other mice, if there's no contact of your own kind, you die. This man will die in what I think is the most horrific of circumstances. And I don't care where you stand on the death penalty, that has got to be the worst. I'm going to take your picture now. Yeah, I'm going to take your picture. Don't lie now. Why not? Yes, no. And in fact, I want to get a lot of pictures of people in the standing hood today. So some of the things have to do with injustices in my city, Chicago. This one called Failing Neighborhoods. It has a little red cross on a building there. I lost my mom a few years ago, and the house that was right across from her, I had known the owner and his wife and his children, and I had known Mr. Clark's house for most of my life. Mr. Clark was deceased, the girls are gone, the house was empty. Moved into my mother's house, and I saw this metal little sign with this red cross on Mr. Clark's house. I asked friends, I said, I'm seeing these red things, what do they mean? And they're like, I don't know. So I kept calling and asking and called Alderman's office, where there was a program that the Chicago Fire Department, Police Department, and City Council put together, where they went across the city and they decided that certain houses were not worth saving. And so if they're one of these crosses on a house, firemen will not come out if there's a fire. The police will not come out if there's a problem. Okay, here's my garage. Here's the alley. Here's Mr. Clark's house. If Mr. Clark's house burns, and it's a windy day, which I live in Chicago, my house burns. I started to call the alderman. I said, this is not reasonable. I don't know who owns the property anymore, but this must end. Why are you even doing this? Is this about the decimation of a community? And the answer is yes. Because most people in that neighborhood had not called the alderman's office because they didn't know that they had the ability to do. I'm a nosy one, I'm a loud one, and I'm just like, so I got the house loved. You know, I insisted, and the house is now gone, there's garden on that block, but there's so many other properties in Chicago that are mostly in poor communities that if they burn, something is going to burn to the left and right. And then a block is gone. Because who stays in a block with 300 buildings? And people will bleed. And then someone else can come in and buy the property back for pennies. Or nothing, be given away. And I live in an area called South Shore, which is close to the lake. And there are entities that want the lakefront back. So any properties that are close to the lake, the cheapest they can get them, that's what they're going to do. So that is one of the injustices that I decided I needed to put a lens on. That other people need to see it, other people needed to talk about it, other people needed to know they had power, and they could go to their alderman's office too, and they could either get the signs taken down, or they could have the property taken down. So it's local injustices, it's national injustices, it's injustices that are timeless, it's injustices that are brand new, and the beat goes on. So I hope that you like the work a little bit. I know that there are hard truths in it, but I hope that some of the beauty shines through, and that you can see your part in when you're faced with injustice, that you stand up to injustice and say that you have a duty to change things, that you have a right to change things, and that most important, you have the power to change things. So thank you. So, in the original show, there were large installations, and of course, this space is about an eighth of the space where the first show was. So I had very large things built, and the largest installation was about an enslaved African woman and her captivity, and her beauty, and how she was loved. And without that here, I was just like, I need a piece that speaks to the woman, the enslaved African woman, and her daughters. And I was so moved watching the DNC and seeing those mothers stand up there who lost their children and stand in solidarity. first for themselves, so they knew that they weren't alone in this horrible country, but then as an image to the world. And so I wanted to put women back in the show, so I created this piece of the 9 women as angels, goddesses, mothers. Because that's what mothers are. And that's this one in the corner, because in the original show, when you walked in the front door, there were branches hanging from the ceiling, and hanging from the branches were lynched hoods. It was hard. It was hard. I thought I needed to bring the lynching thought back into the show, so I created this piece, and I kept looking at images, those historical photos of lynchings, and they were so horrible. They were so devastatingly horrible. And what was more horrible than seeing burnt flesh were seeing faces of people looking at it with smiles on their faces. And I didn't want to put that in the show. I didn't want to have that image, that kind of horror in the show. And so I had seen the flag before that the NAACP used to hang out their office windows in New York every day that they got word that another person was lynched. And they would put it out the window on Madison, saying, "A man was lynched today. Pay attention," and so I took one of those historical photos and I doctored and I put it within the burnt hood. So we still had the burning, but not of flesh. Because I couldn't do it. I told my partner, I was watching them, I was looking at these photos, and I was becoming physically ill. And I thought about, there was a touring show of the lynching postcards, and it opened up first at the New York Historical Society. This is some years ago. And I got to New York the day it opened, and everyone was saying, "You must see it." So I ran to the door, it was 2 blocks from my friend's apartment, ran to the door, and they had just closed for the day. And I said, "Oh, I'll come back." So I came back 2 days later, they were closed for an event. I said, "Oh, okay, I'll come back because everybody's telling me it's important to see." I came back my last day, they said, "Oh, we had a drain pipe something that burst, so we had to close early." And there was an old gentleman there who's probably been there as a guard forever. And I looked at him and I said, "I tried to see this show 3 times. And he looked at me and says, "Darling, not everybody was supposed to see everything. You were not supposed to see this show. As a grandfather, I am telling you, you were not supposed to see this show." Okay. So I never, when it traveled to other cities and came to Chicago, I never tried again. I did not want to see it. So I've got a hand up here with a question.
Yeah, as artists, you make this artwork. I would like to know, before you did this artwork, during the process of creating this artwork, creating this show, did you look at another side of the victims, the crimes of those people committed? Did you look at this side and what conclusions they come up with the dark truth in America? So from this show, I only can see one side about the darkness of the capital punishment. One more time again, did you look at another side? The crimes they
Okay, so
committed.
the gentleman in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
he absolutely killed somebody. I know he should be punished Absolutely, he took a life. I know that, I believe it. It's not one of those things, well, maybe he didn't. He took a life. I know that. I'm talking about the way in which his life is now being taken. There are no other modern countries in the world who take lives, who decide to be God and take lives like the United States of America does.
That's not God, Daddy. It's something else.
It is something else.
I mean,
It is something else.
it is something else.
It is something else. You're absolutely right. So when there is crime involved, I absolutely do look at it.
Yeah.
But when all of those people were taken from Africa, which started a cycle that has not yet been broken, there were no crimes. They were somebody's sons and daughters living their lives. And their life was taken, their culture was taken, their language was taken, everything that makes us who we are, our food makes us who we are. Their food was, everything was taken. They were thrown into ship's holds with people who didn't speak the same language. Everything was taken away. And the institution of slavery itself tried to deny every single one of those people of their humanity. It didn't succeed, but it tried very, very hard. And so we are talking about a very long period of time in which that pain went on, as opposed to the amount of time that we've still been here. Where's Jason? He had to go. Jason did, some of you know he's an artist here. He did a piece. He does these beautiful women, these beautiful portraits, but he also did this very stark series where he just did color blocks, and he did panels that were inches per year. And he did one color block for the amount of time the slavery went on. He then did another color block that was the amount of time for Jim Crow. He did another color block, what that was time of civil rights. And then this next color block of freedom and equal rights was this fall. So when you look at it that way, when you see the real amount of years, the real amount of pain, you start to go, I'm going to be kinder and gentler. I'm going to speak to somebody a different way. I'm going to help them if I can. Maybe I can't. Maybe they're too far, but maybe that one over there I can help. Maybe, just maybe. Because the pain is much longer, the devastation is much longer than anything that came after the Civil Rights Movement. It's a very short period of time. You're welcome, my love. Any other questions? This is very hot.
It's pretty hot.
Yes.
Just one more. Before I ask the question, I just wanted to thank everybody here because I'm a historian. I'm a professional photographer. I love your works. And I think this exposes all of us to the realities that we're all living today. And everyone in here today came for a specific purpose because you're open-minded enough to begin the dialogue. And that's what your artwork does.
Thank you.
It opens up a dialogue amongst all of us because we're not bad people. We're all the same, yet we live in our reality. So I just wanted to put that out there. I just wanted to ask you to just expound on the piece from about North Carolina.
Greensboro.
Yeah, Greensboro.
The Greensboro sit-in. I'm not going to be able to, because my brain skips beats every now and then. I can't call out the young men's names anymore, but it is on that sheet there.
Okay.
But their names are there.
Good. Okay.
The Congress of Racial Equality had started bus-ins where they started gathering bright young students from all over the North. And these were young black students, young white students, seminarians, young priests, nuns, and they started busing them in to help with the voting laws. and poll taxes and all those things that were stopping Black people from being able to vote, even though the law said we could. But there are things in place and horrors in place to stop Black people from voting, because the vote is what changes things. And so if you stop a large population from being able to vote, then the change cannot happen. And that was what was going on in most of the southern states in the U.S. And so CORE and other entities were sending busloads of kids down to the South to help people register to vote and to protest against segregation and to protest against some of the atrocities that are happening in the South. So Woolworths, Woolworths doesn't even exist anymore, does it? At all. They're gone. Yeah. So Woolworths was like the major five and dime. It was the Target. For those who are too young to remember Woolworths, they were Target stores. They had lunch counters, they had soap, they had cheap perfume, it was always cheap perfume. They had clothing, they had underwear, they had play sets for kids, they had miniature bowling sets, they had everything. And it's where America shopped, was at Woolworths, but it was segregated. And so these four young men from a they were from North Carolina, A&T. And they went and they sat in at one of the counters, and it's an iconic photo that was taken of them, and they sat there, and they sat there, and they sat there, and they sat there, and they sat there. And finally, Woolworths did change its segregation policy, and they allowed anyone to sit at a lunch counter and order food. But it was a hard-fought battle to be able to sit down and eat a bad hot dog. They're just bad hot dogs. But they fought very, very hard, and they fought under possibility of a loss of life. There are people very angry that they had the temerity to say, I should be able to sit down with you and eat with you. And so there are people who were hurt during the bus-ins and the sit-ins. There are people who were hurt badly. And there were people whose lives were changed because of Congressman John Lewis, who just did the sit-in in Congress a couple of weeks ago. He was a bus-in kid, and he nearly lost his life. His head was shattered so bad that they weren't sure that he was going to live. So people lost their lives by saying, I should have the same rights as you. These aren't thugs, these aren't criminals, these are kids in college. That's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. The Girl Scouts have a job to do. So that's the Greensboro lunchroom city. And you want me to go there and read their names? I'll go read their names.
Okay.
Because I feel badly that I cannot remember their names. He's L. Blair Jr., David Richmond, Franklin McCain, and Joseph McNeil are the four young men.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So are there any other questions? Then there could, I've got one over here.
I say this is on radio show, right? Okay, but this is what I would say to you, is that you would frighten many people by your correctness.
I frightened you?
You could.
Oh.
Because you're correct. And what you're speaking is correct. And oftentimes you shy away from correctness. You do. It's like these things up here. You're very correct. The way you talk about things is very correct. You shy away from correctness. Sometimes it's really difficult for us to have a honest, direct conversation. Like the question that the man posed, I thought was interesting, about looking at it from another angle. And oftentimes that is a conversation. Let's look at it from another angle. Even after you blocks, and blocks, So we shy away from that directness of conversation. And it comes up a lot. So I applaud you, your courage, and your directness, because I think it's so necessary that we hear it just that way. I think look at people when you're talking. Don't look at something. Look directly at people. I think it's so important that we don't ourselves shy away from the conversation. It's too direct. Being a woman, it's too direct. But I think you're wonderful in your directness. It's necessary. And I applaud you for your directness.
I never thought. I've just been allowed now. I'm a Catholic school kid. I was taught, my sister married nations, and we were taught to speak truth. And so that's what I've always done. I had good parents and good nuns. And so thank you all for coming out. Because the only way the world changes is when we talk to one another. So, we've already been talking to one another. So, thank you all.
I just want to reiterate what you just said. I always tell artists and anybody else, there's a certain audience that's here tonight, and I'm grateful for every one of you for being here. Partly because I hope you will be excited enough to be an ambassador for what's happening here and for this really important work that's here in this space. The YMCA is open weekdays, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We are often open on the weekends, depending on what else is going on. So that's a little more hit and miss, but we're willing to make ourselves available. And please bring people back. The Y really considers ourselves and takes pride in being a place of dialogue. Where people really come and really talk about different things. I think one of the main goals of art, and certainly art in this space, is to get us talking with each other. I appreciate your comments so much, sir. Getting us talking about important things and finding some action to take on that kind of conversation. So please come back. Please bring us.